All right. So, hey guys, I'm Trapper. I'm with Trip with Dad, where every trip becomes a story you'll tell for years. And I'm here with Charles. And Charles, glad you hopped on, man. We've only gotten to know each other, what, in the last month and a half?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, he interviewed me. Now it's my turn to interview him. And so I'm excited to hear his story and hear about him. And so, without further ado, let's just hop right into it.
Sounds good, Trapper.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you grew up, your family now, and what area of life you're in right now.
Yeah, area of life. Well, we'll end with that because I'm not sure what area of life I'm in. But anyways, no, thanks, Trapper. Appreciate the opportunity to do this. And I grew up in eastern Iowa in the Quad Cities. So I'm an old fashioned river rat, and spent time on the Illinois side, which we'll leave that comment for later. But anyway, spent the majority of my time growing up on the Iowa side. So. Um, we did a lot of fishing in the Mississippi River, and there you don't use you start with a 1 pound weight when you're fishing in that river. Then you go from there. But no, I have a family. My mother and father actually they divorced when I was 9, and why this is important is because then they waited until I was 25. They got remarried.
Yeah,
And they stayed married until my dad passed back in 2000. But
awesome.
yeah, I have four siblings. I almost say five, but I don't know where that extra number comes from. But yeah, four siblings. I have two older sisters, an older brother, and a younger sister. And man, growing up, we'd just do anything. Back in the day, we were outdoorsmen. My brother would go out and we'd build a fort, tear it down, build it again. My
Yep.
dad would say, "Get out of the house, go do something." So we'd go do something. This before, so back you say the area of my life. So back in the day before video games were really around, so I didn't have that opportunity to do that too much. But anyway, yeah. So as I grew up, I finally ended up going to college, attending University of Iowa, and I would have to say it was the 5 best years of my life because I really enjoyed partying. I mean, I was that kind of guy. I just loved to be out, loved to connect with people, and a lot of times that was done at the bar. So uh,
Hmm.
anyway, but so a different story. So I was there. Yeah, you raised your hand. So yeah, Iowa Hawkeye,
I'm a
right?
Hawkeye fan, man.
Through and through, man, through and through. Did pretty well in the tournament this year. I was
Yeah,
surprised.
exactly.
Yeah. So then from there, I moved to I took a job with I work in retail at Menards as a assistant office manager and did that for a few years and realized that working 70 hours a week was not exactly what I went to school for.
Right.
In other words, I didn't want to spend the rest of my life doing that. Now, great, kudos to those who can do it because that was awful. Anyway, moved over to the Des Moines, Iowa area in I'll say 95-ish. Lived over and lived in lots of places. Lived in Fontenelle. Actually worked
Yeah.
at Winterset,
Yep. Good
a
area.
company called Woodmark. So I did
Hmm.
shipping logistics for them for
Yeah.
about 2 years. Then I started working at Principal Financial Group, and again going back quite a few years, so 1997, so almost 30 years ago, and met my then wife. But I have to back up because in the midst of those times, I think it's important to share, at least from my growth and my perspective. I did meet a woman in Iowa City. We married 3 years, didn't have any children. It was a rough go at that. We had she just didn't really see the need to stay faithful, and so 3 times over 3 years, and she
Uh-huh.
left. She left me, which was contrary to my Christian upbringing. So I do need to backtrack and say, growing up, we didn't really go to church, but I knew there was a God, and I knew that through my father, who he attended church at time, but he didn't, we didn't talk about Jesus
Hmm.
much at all, and if any, if I can remember. But he had the godly principles and morals, and so he brought me up the way the Lord would have me. And so I never really strayed from that, which is interesting. I always had a God heart, a God-shaped heart, as we all do.
Yep.
And so that carried me again through college. It was a little bizarre because I kept thinking I was praying to God while I was having a lot of fun. Um,
Hmm.
so then anyway, so backtrack to the marriage. I didn't want to get divorced. I was taught when you get married, you stay married.
Right.
You make it work regardless. And you want to talk about square peg round hole, man. This was terrible. So the good news in that is number one is that God had a better plan for me. Number two is I didn't have any children in that marriage
Yeah.
because it's very, I mean, having come from a family where they parents divorced, it was rough. It was rough. And so I can relate to what people go through there.
Mm.
Um, anyway, and so when I met my now wife, and I've been married to her for 28 years, so I met her in 1997, the same time I started my job in Des Moines,
Nice.
and she had two children already from her previous marriage. Her marriage, we don't need to get into details of that. It was very abusive and awful.
Mm.
So she had an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, the 8-year-old boy and a 10-year-old daughter, which I then inherited as a
Yep.
step parent. And it was really cool, Trapper, because I had an upbringing from my parents that I could lean on. And my dad was still alive at that point. So I
Right.
could lean on that. I mean, I knew how to be a good father because I had a good father. Um, Now, was he perfect? Absolutely not. I mean, he made a lot of mistakes. He drank a lot, which is why my parents got divorced. But where I'm going with that is I had a foundation to build from with these kids. And my wife at the time, she says,
Hmm.
before we got married, she goes, "You sure you want to do this? Because I've met a lot of guys, and most of them, when they find out I have kids at this age, they're like, we don't want any part of that." And this is where I'm saying this is a God thing. And now I'm getting goose flesh here because
Yeah.
there's a reason God brought me out of the pits of hell in where I was living at the time. Because after I went through my divorce with my ex, I was depressed. I was drinking by
Mm.
myself. I was in a bad way, and she was also in a bad way after having been, taken
Yeah.
the physical abuse, and not physical. Let me correct that. It was verbal abuse for about 11 years. He brought us together at a bar in Des Moines and of all places,
At all
just
places.
1 o'clock in the morning, I'm like, hey, I need somebody to dance with. And she goes, you don't want to dance with me and whatever. And so we dance. And I said, can I get your phone number? She goes, why? You're not going to call me. Anyway, that's a whole story for a different day.
Right.
But how it plays out is that God had a better plan for me. And I didn't know what it was. And when he brought me into this family of her and her two children, I had the blessing, and I mean this, Trapper. I can't say this enough words. Um, to have an 8-year-old boy and a 10-year-old daughter, all of
Yeah.
a sudden, then now I've inherited. When I say inherited, I mean going through childhood. Like if you're raising a child from birth up to 8 years old, you kind of learn some things.
Yep.
And because now I have two grandsons, one from each of their families, and I got to learn kind of what it's like to have a child from not sleeping at night to 2 years old to 4 years old. Well, then I jumped in
Every
at
kid
eight
is
years old, and I'm
crazy.
like, wait, these kids have attitudes already. Wait a second, what's going
Yeah.
on? But the long and the short of it is, it took you read these different studies about it takes about 7 years for the children to accept a step parent as their parent, and it was about almost exactly that.
Mm.
Um, and it was just neat to look back in retrospect and watch. But here's the other key aspect is in 1997, not only did I meet my wife, but I found my way back into church.
Yeah.
And it was December 10th of 1997 that I recommitted my life to Jesus because I had done
Good.
that through some different means with my ex-wife, which again, we don't need to keep revisiting that. The key is my wife committed her life to Christ for the first time, December 10th, 1997. And it
Nice.
probably wasn't more than it was probably 3 months later. Both of our kids were baptized. They accepted Christ and were baptized. And so we all
Awesome.
went through water immersion baptism together. Um, and just from there, the presence of the Lord in our lives has just been tremendous. And what I've learned from parenting is this. Well, I learned a lot of things. Number one, um, I had I had to get to know these kids, but then I also felt like immediately I felt as a disciplinarian to make sure that they are walking the right path.
Hmm.
And so when they accepted Christ, and then yes, did they stray? Of course they did. And I say, of course they did, because we live in an interesting fallen world, and we have our own challenges. But there's several things we did. And Trapper, I'm just going to go until you tell me to stop. So
Yeah, yeah, no, no, you're actually
I got a
doing
lot.
well. You're
I got a
doing
lot here.
well.
So
Because you kind of
yeah,
touched a little bit about question number two, and we'll definitely get to where you're headed here real quick. But question two, then maybe dig just a little bit deeper for you.
yeah,
Is what did fatherhood look like for you growing up?
yeah. Very interesting, because my father was a ex-Marine from the and keeping so he was 40 when I was born, so he was a couple generations older than me. So he went through the Marines back right before the Korean War,
Hmm.
and just a little bit different Marine Corps back then, a little stricter. I
Yes.
mean, he would he'd get some beers in him, and he would make sure that he shared with us some of the challenges of going through boot camp, and even once he was through boot camp. So he was a disciplinarian. The short answer is,
Hmm.
and it's interesting, and it's a good point, Trapper. Thank you for bringing this up, because his history is important, because he was the first. He went to the Marines. He played semi-pro baseball. He was the first to graduate from college in his family, and because he grew up in West Virginia, he's the first graduate from his family from college. Went on to get his master's, and he had this idea of, if it's going to be, it's up to me. I'm gonna do it. That's it. Period. And he had a determination about him that he passed on to us. Pros and cons, because there were times I really wanted to go out and play, and he says, "No, you're going to learn your oh, I can't remember what flashcards, the multiplication tables." I'm like, man, I'm blocking it out.
Yeah.
Um, but there was, so from a disciplinarian perspective, he taught me everything. But here's the thing: the father that I had, and he loved his children, and it was very evident. And he went out of his way. You'd hear him talking about us when he didn't know that we were listening.
Mm.
And my mother was the same way. But having a role model like that, there were lot of many positives. Now, the negatives were he was an alcoholic, so he was a depressed drunk, and so when he would get too many drinks in him, as a traveling salesman, he traveled quite a bit, but he was home. But he would just he never abused us, but
Mm.
he was very depressed. And when somebody's very depressed, you pick up on that vibration through the whole house. And
Yeah, you do.
there were some scary times where we weren't sure if he was going to hurt us, but he never touched us. He just got verbal and was just depressed with the world.
Mm.
So I learned from him in a way of what to avoid. If that's kind of I don't, and I'm not sure
Kinda,
if that
yeah.
helps, Trapper, where you're kind of going with your question there.
Kinda. Yeah, it's kind of like that. I mean, because your fatherhood, like for my dad, growing up, everything was perfect on as far as I could see, except for one thing, and his anger and rage towards sports and towards me getting my homework done is the two things that carried with me all the way through.
Interesting. Very
And
similar.
it translated and transferred right into my son when he wouldn't get his homework done. It clicked, and I had to deal with that issue my own self. I had a rage issue like you would not believe, and I don't have it now. It's awesome. Rage is gone, and praise God because now I'm in a
Oh,
relationship
praise
with my son.
God.
Huge,
Yeah.
but then they were scared of me. So yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, definitely translates into it. So, and that's the question three is. So now that you have those 8 and 10 year old kids. So how did what that fatherhood looked like you growing up? How did that shape you as you started that father relationship with them?
Yeah. I would say the short answer is that I knew the value. I'm going to use a quote that my dad had. He said, kids are going to push on a wall. They're going to push on you. They're going to push on like they're pushing on a wall. They're going to push hard. They're going to
Hmm.
challenge you. They're going to push. They don't want that wall to crumble,
No.
because when that wall crumbles, they end up out in the wilderness and they're lost. They're looking around like, what just happened? And so, what my dad taught me, or I picked up through being raised by my dad, is that you hold the line, and you
Hmm.
hold the line, and yep, they're gonna say, "I hate you, can't stand you." You hold the line and say, "I love you. I know this. You'll be fine. You'll get over this." And I guess as a male, as a father figure, We're
Yep.
warriors. We're called to be warriors.
Yep.
We don't have that nurturing. Like my wife's like, she kind of do the head tilt. She see, and I have to say
I
this
know
too.
that tilt.
You do, I know it happens. It's like she's like, I really need to go there. But my wife always had my back. She always trusted me, and I really um, leaned on being the spiritual leader of the home, and I didn't
Mhm.
take it lightly. It wasn't a lording it over anybody. It was like, hey, honey, I need your help here. I need you to support what I'm doing. And if I'm wrong, let's talk about it away from the kids for
Yeah.
sure. I was always
Yeah.
teachable coach. Um, but that's how my dad's approach to raising us carried over into me raising them immediately, where I knew that there were certain things you love them, you train them, you stay firm, and you can't give in to them, so to speak, because it doesn't you cripple them. You cripple
Yeah.
them when you don't help them go. And I just have to add this too is as my son began, and as you notice, I call them my son and daughter because I've
Absolutely.
known them so long.
Yep.
They're my son and daughter. So
Exactly. That's what they are, man.
my son, of course, followed the path of he had the challenge. He had to be a boy, and this is back when you're gonna laugh. This is back when cell phones really were starting to come out. We only had a couple cell phones. He didn't. The kids didn't have cell phones. So one night he took my wife's cell phone to a basketball game. He went down to watch a basketball game or whatever. He said he'd be back later. And I didn't know he took the phone. My
Mm.
wife didn't know he took the phone. And when I found out he took the phone, we were sitting at the table and we were doing our budget. And and there's a couple things to know. Back then, the budget's tight. We take a calculator to the grocery store to
Yeah.
buy food.
I,
Oh, we
I
got to
remember
put
these
something back on the
times.
shelf because we're over. And I was sitting there and I knew he took that phone and Trapper, my head, I could feel the blood rushing to my head. I was getting extraordinarily angry to the point of rage. And
Mm.
mine raged a little bit when he walked in the door. He walked in the door and I lit him up like a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
And as I was doing it, it felt right because I'm disciplining my son. He disobeyed orders, he disobeyed the rules. But here's the key for anybody listening to this. Please recognize that as a human being, the Lord showed me, he's like, are you raging because you're offended? Or are you raging because you're trying to help discipline your son?
Right.
And I'm like, oh my gosh. And after that, I bawled,
Yeah.
not in front of my son, because it didn't hit me that soon. This is more back in time of prayer. It hit me, and the Lord showed me that, and I bawled. I'm like, that is so powerful for every father out there. Recognize, pay attention. How
Mm.
are you experiencing your interaction with your children? Because sometimes it's because you're offended and not because you're actually doing it for what you think is the right reason.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when you talk about rage and talk about boiling, the Hulk. Everyone knows who the Hulk is. That from he goes from normal guy, and all of a sudden things just start creeping up and going in. Everything tenses in your body, and all of a sudden you start to shake. And when you
Yes.
start to shake, the rage is coming, and then your decisions are really hard because now this has to stop. And that's what anger is, the boundary setting emotion. It has to stop.
Yes.
And so we get into that spot, and as men especially, I've got to stop this. And whatever it takes to do that, but even though that's not exactly right, especially because even as kids, they're the one person, the male in their life, just needs to be that rock for them, and but not be the rock that crushes them.
Ah, very well stated.
You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so getting into that. So in their teenage years, how did that change in how you showed up for them?
Yeah. As they aged, gotten older, um, and I've got to mention the name Josh McDowell.
Yeah,
He's a
no,
Christian author, and I
no,
can't remember Trapper. I don't know how long ago he wrote these books because again, this is
long
going
time
back.
ago.
My son graduated high school in 2007, so I mean that's how far back we're going. But he wrote several books, and he demonstrated two things. Number one is when you kind of feel that rage, that like you're living in the world of chaos and you just kind of want to
Hmm.
choke your kids out. And I'm just gonna say it like a man would. I mean, I just
That's
want to choke
exactly
them out.
right.
I'm
Sounds
done.
good.
Choke you out, put you away, done with you.
Yeah.
He said, walk outside your house, physically walk
Yep.
outside your house, look back in your picture window, whatever window you can see the family in, and see it as it takes away the energy, and you don't see it as chaos. You see it as like, you know what, we're a family. This is what
Yeah.
families do. Yeah, we got issues, we have challenges, we have fun, we do this. This is what you do. The second thing that he reminded me of and taught and I learned from is that as your children grow older in Christ Jesus, they get to a point where they are no longer yes, they're your children. Yes, you're the parent. They're living in your house, but they become more of a brother and sister in Christ.
Yeah.
And like say 14, 15, 16 years old, I started to hang out with my son and
Yeah.
not always correct him when say, you could do that better. Don't do that. I wouldn't say don't do that. I would actually talk to him like a friend and say, man, what was your thought process on that? And just
Uh-huh.
ask them open-ended questions rather than saying, you know what, you don't need to be doing that. And so and I won't get the scripture right, Trapper, but it's the don't exasperate your children.
Yeah.
And so I learned as they became teenagers, and they do okay. I'm going to say it. They do dumb things.
Oh yeah.
They
So do
do
I
dumb
still, by
things.
the
And
way.
my son, he is terrible at covering up. Things. He would do something. He couldn't cover his tracks, save himself. Now my daughter was the opposite. She was tight-lipped, or she was silent. I knew when she was walking around silent, I'm like, something's up. But when you begin to treat them like adults, number one. Number two is um, stop lording it over them as a parent
Oh yeah.
and
Yep.
allow them to live because we can crush their spirit and we can find ourselves forcing them down a path that's not really who they are. Let them be who they are.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So this next question, we'll start digging just a little bit deeper. And as the next three questions are going to get deeper as we go, just so you know. And it's up to you,
Great.
But was there a moment that you can think back to that really changed how you saw yourself as a dad?
I would, it's going to be very related to what the story I just talked about, where there was some point in time, and I can't point to the exact moment, but it clicked that I'm a servant leader in my home.
Mm,
I'm not the king. I'm not the authoritarian. I'm not the guy that's gonna come down on you and crash down on you every time you do something wrong. And I would say you fight the flesh.
yeah,
Um, that's not my dad. I think he yelled at us twice growing up, and that was all it took. He would just get that tone, that voice, and then we
hmm,
knew that we had to toe the line. So I think at that point, Trapper, the combination of that, and then just realizing having the Lord just continuing, and this is it. I spent a lot of time on my face. I did not know how to be a great parent, and what I mean by that is we can all grow and improve. So I don't know that I can put a timestamp on it. Like when Corey and Stephanie, so when my daughter Stephanie, when she was probably just getting ready to drive, um, man, yeah, you laugh, Mister.
I
You know,
don't have a
it's like
daughter, so I don't know that part. So
something changes. It's like something changes and as a parent you're like, oh man. So I guess where I'm going with this is that it keeps coming up that now all of a sudden their precious life mattered in the sense that she's going to be getting behind a wheel.
yeah,
And whatever happens, I wanted our house to be a sanctuary. And please don't misunderstand me. I was not there. I'm just looking back on it right now, saying that's kind of was my design. At some point when they became teenagers, I wanted to make that house a place where they can come back and be safe.
yeah.
This scared the crap out of me, man. When they started driving, and my daughter put the car in a ditch a couple times. I'm not gonna say she was a bad driver. I don't know what she was doing. But anyway, so I don't know if that's kind of
That
the
100% fits because every dad, especially, I mean, me too. When my sons first started driving, when they left the driveway that first time solo, man, I'm scared to death.
Yeah.
I'm in the passenger seat with my both my sons driving. And I'm looking at them like I don't have any control over the situation. If he hits the gas hard, which both of them did, the very first time they're in there, they couldn't wait to drive Dad's truck, and they hit the gas hard, and I'm going, "What in the world? I can't. There's no brake. I can't stop this. And if I do, we're going in the ditch." So you know, so there's a point of trust that we have to give them, and then I think that's when part of us just realize, oh man, my little boy is not little anymore.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know. And but you're
Yeah.
right when it comes to having a relationship, having a friendship with your kids versus just being a dad, which that's really cool. So next question: What's been the heaviest part of being a dad for you lately?
That's a great question, and I could probably spend a lot of time on this. I think the biggest thing that, again, I'm just going knee-jerk reaction because I did not get these questions ahead of time, which I appreciate
That's the
asking.
beauty of it.
Uh, we could live in a world of regret. There's a lot of things that I would have liked to have done differently with my kids. I see the way they've turned out, and I give God the glory. And um, there's several things they. So the long and the short of it is they went through a nasty divorce with their dad and mom, and then I ride in on this horse,
Yep.
and I don't mean a white horse. I'm not even meaning like a knight, but I just ride into the scene, and there was constant tension. The kids would go and spend every other weekend with their dad, who was counterculture to everything I stood for.
Hmm.
It was conditional love. It was, and I don't need to trash talk him. That's not where I'm going with this. The culture was different enough that when my kids got back on a Sunday evening, it took them probably until Wednesday of that next week for them to reacclimate to our house.
Yes. Yep.
Um, and when I say I live a little bit of regret, it's again, we always look back, Trapper, and go, if I would have only known then what I know now. So what I know now is I
Yep.
could have nurtured that literally as a warrior. I could have nurtured that situation more to help my wife get through her very difficult emotional history with him to where it was carrying over. So with the kids. So the regret is that I would have liked to have been able to help them reconcile almost in a therapy. I almost would have had them go see therapists sooner, just right away because they didn't really go until they were adults. In
Yeah.
fact, my daughter still doesn't want to go see a therapist, but there are unresolved issues with that as a dad, I number one coming in, I didn't know what to do. I don't know if I wasn't hearing clearly from the Lord exactly what that was, but I think in retrospect, it would have been really helpful to get them into to a, and I'll say a Christian therapist that understands children and understands that kind of nasty situation that they experienced.
Right.
And then who is this guy in my house? I mean, literally, my son, when I first met my wife, we were sitting on there and he was on the couch over, I can't remember like it's yesterday. We're sitting on a couch facing this way, and my son was over on a love seat. And he was talking to his mom like I wasn't there. He goes, why is this guy in my house? And who is this guy? And what are you doing? Like almost just
Hmm.
lost. And so in retrospect and looking back at it, I would have done things differently and be more of that nurturing parent to say, okay, how do we help you through what you're going through, rather than just doing what I did, which is I said, suck it up, boy, deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah, because you would approach it. It sounds like you would approach them from more a gentle side than you would an actual
Correct.
go
Yeah.
straight at them side. And
Yeah.
so
Instead of yeah. Yeah.
it's amazing what a gentle voice will do to calm things. And I love it. I always thought that God was calling me to call men out in a more firm and get in their face kind of thing. And now God has said, hey, nope, I'm going to have you call them out in gentleness. Oh, that's different. Yeah, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
Because we're men. We struggle with a lot of things, and to have other guys share their story like you are right now, dude, it's huge because there's a guy right now that's going to be watching this that goes, "Yep, that's me, that's me, that's me, that's me," and it's going to click, and you're going to get the goosebumps like I am right now.
Yeah, man, I've had them several times, just even recapping because it's
Yeah,
it's amazing, and I just have to chime in and say too that man, when you make Jesus Christ as your Lord and He's your foundation,
yeah,
I mean I can't state it with the right words. I mean it's a game changer,
major.
because you and I aren't that smart, man. We can't figure it
Nope.
out. Okay, okay, I'll say me, but I know you aren't.
I'm there
None of
too.
us are. None of us are.
I've been married 28 years. I have a little bit of experience in being not smart. So,
And you get
so
that head tilt once in a while, don't you? That.
it's just, yeah, I get it often. I'm deserving
Well,
of
for
it.
sure. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so one last question, and this is probably the one of the deepest ones. And now that your kids are older, and let's even say when they get to be our age or your age, I'm not sure. You probably think you might be a little older than I am.
What gives that away? The hair?
Yeah. I'm starting to get it on the sideburns. I had a lady cut it off last night. But when they're that age, what do you hope that they say about you?
Oh man. Yeah, that's always a tough one, Trapper. Now you're gonna make me talk about myself. Here's I'll start by sharing what my son has said to me since he turned probably around 22, 23.
Hmm,
Every Father's Day. Oh man. He just tells me how much he loves me and how he couldn't figure out how to have two dads.
hmm,
And when he figured it out, um, he just he tells me how much he's learned from me, how much he's grown from me. And I don't I again I can't put it into words, Trapper, other than um my daughter who is the epitome of she just doesn't show a lot of emotion. She also has started to say those things, and again, it's not about me. It's about the impact that the Lord has had in my life and how it's impacted theirs.
yeah,
And so when they get to be my age or even as they get older, so they start, my son Corey really started saying it at a young, years ago. He's 30. Oh gosh, how old is he now? He'll be 37.
hmm,
And so yeah, it's been about 15 years ago, or let's just say that we've had this really neat connection.
yeah,
And I will share with you that it has become it's a friendship with both of them. And my daughter, we everybody's different, so I have my different relationship with her, and so I don't remember exactly what your question was, like what they would say about.
yeah. What do you hope that they would say about you?
I would, yeah, just kind of like what I said about my dad. Like, I would hope that they'd say that, yeah, Charles was hard. He's kind of a jerk at times. But everything that he brought down, I say everything, the things that he taught us helped us to grow and develop as human beings, and to be able to raise our children and have a roadmap for them. And at the very, very, very top of the list, I would hope they'd say, because of what his following of Jesus Christ and Father God and seeking him in prayer
Hmm.
and praying over meals and just the demonstration that it's not about us. It's never about us. It's about who do we become along the way and who can we impact. So I
Yeah,
would like it'd be really fun to hear them say that we've been able to, through following God and being seeing the representation or the way that you led, Dad, that's kind of what we want to continue on.
absolutely, absolutely. So, Charles, thank you for being with us to share your story. Thank you for being vulnerable. Because when you don't have questions, can't prepare for them.
Right?
The first gut reaction or the first raw reaction is actually what guys need to see
Yeah.
and see what's really deep in there. Because you go from you, I literally watched you go from your head, your brain, straight into your heart.
Yeah.
And when that
Yeah.
happens, change happens and neat things happen.
Yeah.
And so thank you for being willing to do that. Let's end the show here and show whatever. It's not really a show, but